What happens when the internet's most trusted developer resource collides with the AI revolution? Well, today I'm joined by the CEO of Stack Overflow, and together we're going to unpack how AI is reshaping the way that we build software and what that means for a platform that's powered by human knowledge. Because in an era where code can be generated in seconds, developers still run into what my guest calls a complexity cliff. A point where machine-generated answers fall short and wisdom of real-world engineers becomes crucial. So I've invited him on today to talk about how Stack Overflow is evolving into a knowledge-as-a-service platform and striking a careful balance between innovation and integrity. And with AI partnerships from OpenAI and Google to integrations inside IDEs and Slack, my guest today is going to share how Stack Overflow is reimagining itself while at the same time staying rooted in community trust. And this isn't just about the future of coding, it's about a future of how we create, validate and share knowledge in an AI-driven world. But enough rambling from me. It's time to introduce you to today's guest. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Thank you, Neil. Appreciate the time and a great fan of your program. So appreciate you talking to us. So I'm Prashanth Chandrasekar. I'm the CEO of Stack Overflow. We are the world's largest software developer community, and we've been around since 2008. We really serve the world's developers and technologists to make sure that they get unstuck when they have questions as they are writing code or really sort of building technology. And we do that through our amazing community of millions of community members all around the world who contribute to this really great knowledge base on the public platform, which has something like 60 million questions and answers on every possible technology topic. And that's the foundation of the company. On top of that, we have an enterprise business where our platform is used in a private and an enterprise sense inside the world's largest companies, the financial institutions of the world. The big tech companies use us, where they leverage a private version of Stack Overflow for knowledge sharing, and more recently now using it as a AI oriented knowledge store for their agentic AI use cases, because that way they can get trustworthy knowledge and their agents. And then the other business that we have is around advertising, which is just a function of us being a pretty large website. So that's us in a nutshell.
Fantastic. And there are so many big changes at the moment. We're finally getting past the hype that has surrounded AI as we enter the third year now. So I'm curious, from what you're seeing, how is the emergence of AI reshape the way that developers approach coding, and what role does Stack Overflow play in this new landscape that's continuously evolving?
Yeah, no, I think you said it correctly in that this is, year three. I think some of the realities have set in, but the excitement is quite palpable, right? Because I think this is certainly, the largest technology shift in, at least in my time, of being in technology. And so it's absolutely amazing to see the progress and the pace of innovation happening in the space. That being said, I think there's a long way to go in terms of how people truly adopt AI tools in a sort of very at a production level, in a very real, tangible level within the enterprise, because there's a lot of things to sort of go and work through. So as a couple examples on the coding space, more specifically, I think the ability for developers and technologists to leverage these AI tools to do a lot of the let's call it the drudgery, to take away the drudgery of writing code, falling over yourselves because of syntax errors, all those sort of things, pretty easy to automate away with code suggestions, and, increasingly now getting these agents to, or this aspiration to have agents to actually perform tasks on your behalf, I think are all, along very, very good lines. However, I think there are issues with trustworthiness of the content that's coming out of these Gen AI tools. Is it rooted in your enterprise's data? Is it secure? Is it actually efficient the way it's written, or is it just a bunch of overly heavy code that's been written for something fairly simple, which, if you do it the right way, it could be a lot more elegant. So I think there's still a long way to go. The overall potential, though, I think is massive. And I think that the general direction of travel is that people will use these more often than not to do a lot of the simple tasks. And that's what we see in our community. People use them to do simple things, but, they do hit complexity cliff issues at some point. And also, of course, the trust issue keeps people from using them holistically within companies. And so we're seeing a lot of experimentation within our enterprise customer base on this topic. And coupled with our enterprise product Stack Overflow for Teams, which is a enterprise knowledge store, as I explained, it gives them the confidence to use these tools when they're grounded in the company's context, which sits on our platform in Stack Overflow for Teams.
And before you came on the podcast today, I was doing a little research on you. I was reading how you've spoken about knowledge as a service and how that could be the future of community-driven platforms. So with that in mind, how are you at Stack Overflow? How are you evolving to support that shift too?
Yes. So as I described previously, the first 15 years of the company, pretty much since 2008, we have been the default for all software developers to go and reference the canonical answer to a question that they may have while writing code. And increasingly now, as people use Gen AI tools to get their simple answers get the answers to their simple questions, and we obviously work with we have struck partnerships with all the big AI companies, the OpenAIs, the Google Clouds, all the cloud providers, all the LLM labs, and so on. And it's, the spirit of doing that is to make sure that we go where our users are, and that's really the intent behind knowledge as a service. That previously people went to a Google search engine and then they would land on Stack Overflow to get the answer to their question. Now the user interface increasingly is people go to Gen AI tools, and you're seeing this where people are using other tools than just search engines to get their information. So as that user behavior has changed, we want to change with that. So while we relied on Google search results previously, because our answers were always indexed very high on the search results because the quality was so high or is high, now we want to get surfaced up in all the Gen AI tools, which is why we've struck all these partnerships. So by doing that, a couple of things are accomplished. One is users in these Gen AI tools are able to get the answers to their questions wherever they are in their workflow, which is very, very good and efficient. At the same time, if those Gen AI tools, even when they are trained on our data, et cetera, through these partnerships, if they're not able to answer the questions because it's a more complex question from the user in the Gen AI tool, we want to enable the opportunity for the user to ask their questions straight onto Stack Overflow from those locations. That then in turn creates new knowledge on our platform, which then gets curated and really really community oriented, and the community really sort of focuses on making sure it's a canonical answer to that question. And that new knowledge is created, which then allows these LLM companies to then continue to train off those, and the world goes round and round. And this is what we describe as LLM brain drain. Because if we don't have new knowledge being created, then that's an issue. So that's what we mean by knowledge as a service, is like going where our users are. If they're going to Gen AI tools to get answers, we want to be there. We'll surface our content up there. By the way, we want to make sure our content is attributed in each of these Gen AI tools so that the users can trust that the answers are coming from an authoritative place like Stack Overflow. And this concept applies both to our public platform data as well as our enterprise business, which is Stack Overflow for Teams.
And as you said there, this is one of the biggest shift, if not the biggest shift, technological shift that we've seen in our careers. If we go back to the 80s and the Spider-Man movies, there's a great line in there: with great power comes great responsibility. So with that in mind, I mean, how can companies ensure that their use of AI is not only innovative, but also socially responsible, especially in the context of open data and user-generated content?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, really. I think, Neil, if you think about the past and the open internet, there was sort of this implicit agreement, where people spent their time contributing to the open internet. And we've been believers of this concept since the inception of this platform. And that only works if, the users have an incentive to do that in a very specific way. So a couple of things that have been done in the past are users created content. That content was indexed by search engines. Traffic came to those sites and that content, and then people, were able to monetize through things like advertising, as one example. So that's one model. The other model of incentives, it was around something like our site, where in addition to advertising, of course, we made sure that we recognize the content creators by, for example, giving them reputation points that they can then sort of showcase the fact that they're the world's best JavaScript programmer, and that one, I think, is it's sort of very gratifying for these folks who are helping their other fellow community members. And number two, I think it helps them in things like their own careers, where they're able to point to the fact that they have been a huge contributor to the community. So when people do take their time to go and contribute to the world's knowledge or the world's understanding or learning or, doing something that positive for the world, I think it's very important for companies that are leveraging all this content, user-generated content, to give back to those users. So in our minds, it's the right thing. When you think about social responsibility, it's around attribution back to the users, so that they get recognized every time their content is used somewhere in a Gen AI tool to respond to some question that somebody has in the tool, as an example. And then, of course, for us as a company, in our case, we want to be able to establish these relationships with all the big LLM and cloud providers, et cetera, who need our data, to make sure that we can further reinvest in the platform, invest back into our users, so they have an excellent experience and benefit from their collective contributions for their own sort of careers and so on, and learning. So that's I think how the world should go around. And so I think it's at a very, very interesting inflection point, where I think generally the nature of the internet, I think, is being questioned. At least the first generation of the internet, I think, is being questioned at the moment, because it can't just be all takers. People can't just going to take, because you need people to contribute. Otherwise, it's not really going to work for AI to move forward.
And we're hearing more and more about LLM brain drain, and at current rates of scaling, there's been a suggestion that an LLM that is trained on all available human text data will be created between 2026 and 2032. So how real is this data crisis for generative AI, and what are the implications for future innovation, do you think?
Yeah, I think this is certainly, if you think about the long pole in the tent, if you want to use that, certainly, I think data is, the most, it's the longest pole, so to speak, in my opinion, because you have, if you pay attention to things like scaling laws in the various levels of the stack, whether that's, the chips, or whether that is, anything above that, computational power, energy, et cetera. But data, I think, does become truly the long pole in the tent, because it's an ecosystem. We're dependent on people generating or coming up with new ideas. Human innovation and ingenuity is required to think about, solving new problems, and there's an infinite number of problems to go solve. And so that you need humans, again, to contribute new knowledge, and as a function of that, you generate data. And so I think the world's data is quite finite, because, certainly I think all the LLM providers, et cetera, have leveraged all the data sources, including with us in kind of a formal sense through our knowledge solutions, data licensing partnerships, and so on. But you need the engine to keep going forward for the LLM companies to keep moving forward. Now, this is, by the way, even in a synthetic data world, where there's a lot of innovation happening in that space. Everything that we've seen suggests that you still need human-generated content and validation and so on to keep generating high-quality data on a go-forward basis. So I don't think you can fully just rely on synthetic data, at least for the foreseeable future. And so that's why I think there is an issue currently, because I think that the data of the world has been somewhat exhausted pretty quickly, and then you just need people to take a step back and think about how do you keep the ecosystem going, and how do you keep innovation moving at the pace at which it's been moving over the past 3 years, as you pointed out. And you need new data to do that.
And I think it's worth highlighting that at Stack Overflow, you have a rich history of a developer community knowledge over there too. So how do you see that knowledge being maybe better leveraged in the age of LLMs without compromising that community of trust? I'd imagine it's quite a fine balancing act, but how do you see this panning out?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, when we've thought about this over the past couple of years, we have wanted to be very, very thoughtful about how we, play a very meaningful role in this, obviously, this amazing movement with the AI age upon us. And so, we are big believers in it. We want to contribute with our community, and we believe we have a huge role to play because the combination of human expert knowledge along with AI and the algorithms and everything else that comes with it is a phenomenal combination. And we have the largest community and the largest data set for technologists, and on either a historical or an ongoing basis. And so we will be, just as a quick point, we will be expanding the number of content types that we have on the site well beyond Q&A, et cetera. So we're going to introduce things like chat and discussions about various topics. And we've already rolled out chat across all our sites as one example. And we just want to keep propagating the ability for people to connect human to human. So the combination of humans and AI, very, very important. We believe that's our fundamental thesis. And in the context of how we think about AI, we've done a couple of things. In addition to point number one, all these partnerships that we've struck with these AI companies in the spirit of knowledge as a service, as we just talked about, we're also incorporating AI into the site in a very thoughtful way. So as an example, when people ask questions on Stack Overflow, they are now guided. Every question is guided by a Google Gemini assistant that is giving them a tip on how to write that question correctly, or not to write a duplicate question, etc. Because historically, people have encountered that issue because, again, the quality and the standards very high on Stack Overflow. But we want to use the best of what's available in Gen AI to make the user experience even better. So that's why I think we're very excited about the incorporation of AI into our platform. The other thing that we've done is incorporated Gen AI into our enterprise product, Stack Overflow for Teams, where now users are able to surface Stack Overflow for Teams content as well as the public Stack Overflow content in their Slack or Microsoft Teams, or even within their IDE within Microsoft Visual Studio Code through a natural language search. So basically a Gen AI interaction. And it's really, really powerful because you're able to get a really validated, attributed set of answers from the core knowledge base, public or private, through a Gen AI interaction. So that's how we're going about incorporating AI and thinking about this more holistically.
One of the things I always try and do on this podcast is give people listening a valuable takeaway, something they can take away to their own business there. And as AI tools become more integrated into development workflows, is there any advice that you'd give to a software team on how they can better balance automation with human insight? Because that is the key point, isn't it? That the two have got to come together side by side.
Yeah, I think it's this notion of making sure that people do exactly that, balance both points, as you pointed out. One is to not be afraid of leveraging these tools for, simple tasks and kind of take out sort of the drudgery of writing code. I think that's very valid. At the same time, being able to incorporate the best of both worlds, incorporate it into something like Stack Overflow knowledge, which, by the way, are the thousands of enterprises that use Stack Overflow for Teams. What we have started noticing is that there's a huge spike in the APIs for our enterprise product because people are building agentic AI solutions inside the enterprise, or testing at least, or trialing these things. And they're absolutely tapping into the knowledge store that is in Stack Overflow for Teams. So this is the very accurate knowledge store and the canonical answers within the company about certain technology topics. And they're able to then trust what's coming out of these agents or assistants within the companies. So that's a great example of, and by the way, we have companies like Uber and a whole bunch of other ones within our customer base that are doing this, and they're very happily using it because it is that great balanced combination of trusted human knowledge that's been curated or is being curated, along with the agentic AI automation that's going to surface content and perform actions on users' behalfs in various parts of the workflow. So that is why I think we are very, very excited about this. And maybe one other point I'd mentioned is along the same lines, we just partnered with MoveWorks just in fact yesterday at their customer conference. And with that, they are leveraging our data for MoveWorks agents within enterprises to leverage Stack Overflow data, Stack Overflow for Teams, the enterprise data, as well as the public data, to be able to, again, provide very highly trusted AI agents within companies. And so that's, I think, really a couple of examples of how companies can leverage these new technologies in a very responsible way.
And if we were to look ahead into the future, are there any other strategic priorities that you might be focused on to ensure that Stack Overflow continues to lead both in community knowledge and also enterprise AI integration? Anything you can share around that?
Yeah, I think we have every year we lay out our priorities, and the beyond, of course, being continue to progress from a profitable growth perspective, et cetera. The other two that we're very focused on is making sure that we really expand the community centric use cases as I described. So the number of content types that we will introduce will be numerous this year. I mentioned chat, discussions. We may even do other things like challenges, et cetera, to really enable our community members to learn, really be connected human to human, and be able to progress their careers. So a lot of what we've done historically is really have a great knowledge base, and we want to really invest in a lot more communal features as well as career-oriented features for our community this upcoming year. So that'll be one. It's the second priority beyond the profitable growth, and the third one is all around what I described previously, which is knowledge as a service. So bringing that vision to life through a lot of these partnerships. Again, we've struck a whole bunch of them with OpenAI, Google, and all the cloud providers, and MoveWorks and others. But we should expect us to do a lot more of those and really integrate our tools, our data with their GenAI tools, so that our content surfaces wherever the users are, inside the company or even independently in a B2C context. So those are our three priorities.
Well, we've learned a lot about yourself today, your career, where you've been, the fact that AI is one of the biggest tech shifts that we've ever seen, and looking to the future and what this will mean. But before we get too carried away, we're going head first into the future. I'm going to ask you to look back in your career again now, and someone that maybe saw something in you or invested a little time in you or just helped you get you where you are today. So we can give a little shout out to that person, because I think it's so important. We all have those people in our lives. I'm almost standing on the shoulder of giants. But who would it be for you and why?
Yeah, I think for me, it's probably my dad, in that he inspired me to think much beyond my own immediate surroundings. And this, when I was 17, I, inspired by his international travels, he sort of really brought back this notion that the world is a very big place and there's a lot of great possibilities. And so I think that just set a spark in me to really sort of think well beyond where I grew up, which was in Bangalore, India, and sort of pursue an international career. And that's sort of what got me to come to the U.S. On a scholarship for college, and then by my sort of career has unfolded since then. Of course, I have to also acknowledge my mom, who's an equally inspirational person, as she is very much a believer in hard work and grit, and making sure that you just never give up and keep going. So I would say my dad and my mom, if that's one person, if you want to combine them.
What a beautiful answer. Absolutely love that. And for everybody listening that just wants to find out more information about Stack Overflow, about some of the topics that we discussed today, and also keep up to speed with some of the work that you're doing, where would you like to point everyone listening?
Yeah, please come to stackoverflow.co. That is our company webpage, beyond, of course, where everybody else goes, which is stackoverflow.com. But all our products, etc., are on our company page, which is stackoverflow.co.
Well, we covered a lot today, from the emergence of AI reshaping the way developers are approaching coding, knowledge as a service as the future for community-driven platforms, and also LLMs now being integrated into so many different tools. But what are those biggest misconceptions that businesses have about data quality and model development? Thank you for sharing your viewpoint on all these points. I'd love to put the microphone in front of everybody listening and ask them to feedback on their thoughts and their takeaways from our conversation today. But more than anything, just thank you for starting it today.
Thank you, Neil. Pleasure to talk to you, and all the best to you.
So a big thank you to my guest today for shedding light on how Stack Overflow is navigating the AI era without losing sight of its roots. And as AI transforms everything from syntax checking to software architecture, so Stack Overflow remains a crucial checkpoint for reliability, for trust and peer validation. And yes, whether it is powering AI assistants in the enterprise or addressing that growing problem of LLM brain drain, human input is still the heartbeat of technological progress. And that's something we don't read enough about on our timelines on whatever social channel you hang out on. So if today's conversation made you rethink the role of community-driven knowledge in an AI-powered future, I'd love to hear from you. How are you balancing speed with trust in your own development work? Slide into my DMs on X, Instagram, LinkedIn at Neil C. Hughes. Let's talk about it. If you want to talk about something else, meet me here again. I'll be waiting in your podcast feeds with another guest, and we'll do it all again. But I'm afraid it's time for me to go. So I will speak with you all again very soon. Bye for now.